Hey there, I'm Dr. Angie, and in this video, I'm going to be answering pet parents' questions about cat spraying, pancreatitis, and why CBD is so darn expensive. So let's get started. I have my trusty pug here, and he will probably interrupt us. So Chris writes, has CBD been used for feline marking? Yes, I have used CBD in kitties that spray. Now, usually it's not the only thing that helps fix the problem, but it can certainly reduce stress and discomfort. We often think cats are only marking for behavior reasons, but sometimes there are medical reasons that veterinarians don't actually find. It might be that they have an upset stomach and there's nothing wrong with their urinary tract, but there's a medical problem somewhere else. And so it's important to get a complete medical workup from your veterinarian. And then you need to start looking at behavior reasons or things in the environment that might be stressing out your cat. For my own kitty, I had great success with the Cat Behavior Clinic. You can just find them at thecatbehaviorclinic.com. And Michelle's wonderful, and she will do phone consultations. She's great, so I'd recommend her. Shannon writes, is there a food you recommend for elderly cats with diabetes and pancreatitis? My cat is still throwing up on the Purina diet for diabetes. Well, the good news is we used to think with pancreatitis in kitties that we needed to feed them a low-fat diet. It's true for dogs, but we're finding it's not true for cats. We don't need to worry too much about their fat intake like we do with dogs. We're probably not going to make their pancreatitis worse with fat. So that opens up a little bit more as far as diet goes with pancreatitis. Now with the diabetes, what we do know is if we are catching diabetes early and we can get cats on a very high protein, low carbohydrate diet, sometimes we can convert them and we can actually cure the diabetes. If your cat's had diabetes for some time, that's probably not going to happen. And in that case, I still recommend using a very high protein, low carbohydrate diet. Sometimes that's just a canned diet with no grains and very few carbs. So if you want to stick with that Purina diet that you're feeding, I would just switch to a canned diet and see if it's the kibble that's causing your cat to vomit. Linda writes that her cat's having diarrhea. What can I feed her? And I'm interested in learning more about food allergies. Well, unfortunately, cats having diarrhea, there's a lot of reasons your kitty could be having diarrhea. So heading to your vet is a good place to start. Usually blood work, maybe an abdominal ultrasound, and a poop test to check for parasites is a great start. If you don't find anything there, sometimes just switching cats from a kibble diet to a canned or raw diet can be helpful, but really getting a medical workup is the best start. Cheryl writes that her cat is having chronic pancreatitis. I've been told that low-fat diets are the best, but she's picky. Is hemp RX oil palatable? My cat's really picky. And will hemp RX address her pancreatitis? Well, just like I discussed earlier, we don't really know if cats should have limited fats with pancreatitis. We're finding out that that's not really the case, that we need to restrict their fat. Because when we restrict fat, we restrict palatability of food. Fat just tastes good. And so I think that you could let up on a low-fat diet and do something tastier. Now, hemp RX I use all the time with cats with pancreatitis. And because I do so many other things, it's hard to know how much it's helping by itself. I still recommend using it. It's a great anti-inflammatory. The other thing I like to use for cats with pancreatitis are really antioxidant-rich supplements, and then I address any other disease surrounding the pancreas. So liver disease or intestinal disease. Most cats that have chronic pancreatitis have some form of intestinal disease called inflammatory bowel disease. So you might talk to your vet about that, and you might try like a novel protein or a hydrolyzed protein diet if you can't get the pancreatitis under control. Carolyn writes, my dog's blood work came back with high cholesterol and triglycerides. I feed her a diet formulated on Balanceit.com using walnut oil. Could this be the cause of the high cholesterol and triglycerides? Could omega supplements cause high triglycerides? Okay, so let's break this down one thing at a time. So often when dogs have high fats in their blood, it's not from diet. So if you bring your dog into the vet and they find high triglycerides, high cholesterol, usually they're gonna recommend that you recheck that sample fasted. So no breakfast for your dog, no food within 12 hours. Now, if that's still high, then we start looking for underlying disease, Cushing's disease, thyroid disease. There are other metabolic processes that can cause high cholesterol and high triglycerides. So that's the next step. If that still doesn't work, there are a subset of dogs and some dog breeds that just have high cholesterol. And if that's the case, then we just do what we can to feed them a low-fat diet. I don't think the walnut oil specifically is causing the high triglycerides, but it's possible that if we lowered the amount of walnut oil in the diet, the triglycerides and the cholesterol could possibly come down. Now, at this point, since you're using Balanceit.com, I would recommend reaching out to a veterinary nutritionist and having them formulate a lower fat diet for you. Let's see, I want to make sure I answered all the questions. Oh, could omega supplements cause high triglycerides? So generally we think omega supplements lower triglycerides, but there are reports of them actually increasing it. So I don't know for sure, but in theory, they should lower triglycerides. Jan writes, my 9-year-old rough collie has an autoimmune disease. I'm using hemp and other supplements. I'm looking for recommendations about diet. So this is a great place where traditional Chinese medicine does really well with autoimmune disease. I generally use a mix of Chinese medicine, diet, and then traditional immunosuppressives for my dog patients that have autoimmune disease. As far as diet goes, I usually take out all the grain for all of my patients that have autoimmune disease and either go with a cooked or a raw diet if possible. Vince writes, I have a 10-year-old bulldog with arthritis and food allergies. It's okay, Krause. I don't know what he sees. There's nothing out there. Okay, so Vince writes, I have a 10-year-old bulldog with arthritis and food allergies. That's very common. How will HempRx assist him, and is the price of HempRx worth it? This is a really great question. It's okay, bud. I think the wind's blowing in the trees. So HempRx is probably going to help with the arthritis, and I'm not sure it's going to help with the allergies. I've had some patients in my practice have favorable results, and they will scratch less on HempRx, but I can't say it's consistent enough that I would feel good about recommending it for food allergies. It's definitely worth a try. And then why is HempRx so expensive? This is a great question, and I get asked this a lot. Right now, organic hemp, I'm so sorry. Just face him the other way. He thinks he sees something. Don't look. Organic hemp is hard to find. Now that the Farm Bill has passed, I'm hoping that more people will start growing hemp and the price will go down. The extraction method, CO2, is also expensive. And so when you find some products that are less expensive, I always wonder how they were extracted. They're extracted with ethanol. It's not my favorite. It's probably okay for people, but our dogs are so much smaller than us that I worry about the toxic chemicals that could be left behind. And the more concentrated the product, the more expensive it's going to be. And but although the more concentrated the product, generally the less per milligram of CBD. So our most expensive bottle is the HempRx Forte, but it has so many more milligrams of CBD compared with anything else that per milligram of CBD, it's actually the cheapest option. I hope that answered your question, and I hope that in the near future, we're gonna see the prices of CBD come down. If you have a big dog, it can be really cost prohibitive, and I recommend finding the smallest dose that gives the best effect. If you have any questions for me, I'd love to hear from you. You can find me at Angie, A-N-G-I-E, at BoulderHolisticVet.com, and I will talk to you soon.